Hi everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I've got a fun project for you today. Take a look at this quilt behind me. Isn't this fun? Now there's a lot of order to this quilt, and that's why I called it English Garden. I don't know if you've ever been to an English garden, but there's so much planning and order and beauty that goes into them, and that's what I thought of when this pattern came together. So to make this quilt, what you're going to need is one packet of 10-inch squares, and we've used Evergreen by Edita Sitar for Andover fabrics, and it's a beautiful line. It did have some light fabrics in it, and I wanted this rich, full green color throughout the whole thing, so I only made 30 blocks, so I used 30 of those squares. I also used 30 background squares. Now for the plum color, you're going to need 1.75 yards, and it's this beautiful plum color. It also takes in this first border. Look how good I matched this sweater. I mean, this is good, right? Who would have known? Anyway, it makes a really fun quilt really easy. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take one square of background and one square of our green, and we're going to put them right sides together like this, and we are going to sew 1/4 inch all the way around this block. Now I have one here that's already done right here, and what you're going to do, some of the things people ask me about, when I'm doing this is, do you sew right off the end? Do you stop and pivot? I just sew right off the end. I'm always in a hurry, moving fast, and I just sew right off the end. All right, so what I've done here is I've taken my ruler and I've lined it up corner to corner. So don't worry, like if you're sewing around and you get like a little tuck in your corner or something, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter at all. What you want to concentrate on is making sure that your seam line is the same on all 4 sides. But even that's not going to matter too much because we are now going to square these. So I'm going to use my my Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer for this, and I'm going to lay it on here, and I'm going to square these at the biggest piece. So we're at 6.5, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this ruler right over to the edge like this and square it at 6.5. Now this means I only have to cut off one side and that's how this, not all of them work out that way. Sometimes you have to cut off both sides, but this one worked out that way. So 6.5. So let's just try a few of these. Again, you're going to match their seam line on your seam line, and we are just going to trim off our little dog ears like this, and then we're going to trim up this side, and this squares things right to 6.5. I feel like this tool was a little present for me because I had such a hard time wrapping my head around squaring blocks. I just couldn't make too much sense of it, so this one has been a gift for me. So I'm cutting off my dog ears, and I'm seeing that this doesn't lay up here straight on this one side, so then you have to trim both sides like this. And that makes your block perfectly square, and we'll do this last one as well. So again, my seam line lines up on their seam line. We're going to see if we can put it all the way to one edge, and I'm going to end up trimming a little bit on this one as well. So, that seam around, it doesn't really matter because we're going to square these. But we do want to square them so that they're all 6.5. Okay, so now we've got all 4 of these cut, and you want to do this to all 30 of your blocks. You want to do all your sewing, all your cutting, because when we put these back together, we want to mix them up. So I'm going to lay my dark on the top and just roll these back, press to the dark side to hide that little seam. Oh, there we go. One more. And then one more. Here we go. All right. So you'll have 4. You're going to do this. You're just going to put them in a pile like this. And then you're going to pull them and put 4 of them together that you want to use in a block. And they should be different. Mine were all different. And I love all the different hues in this line. And so what we're going to do now is once you get all your half square triangles made, we need to snowball those corners. And this is what I'm talking about with this block. And we're going to sew little 2.5-inch squares onto the corners of our block. So we're going to bring 4 of these together that have different prints on them, and I've got my 2.5-inch squares cut here, and I'm going to do a little sew line on them. Now, after doing 2 of these on every single half square triangle, I actually got really good at sewing just corner to corner, and I think you will too. But I'm going to start by showing you can either draw a line or press a line corner to corner on your blocks, and then we're going to put them right here on the edges this way. And we're going to sew, our sew line is going to be across the seam like this. So here's our seam, and our snowball is going to be across the seam. So we're going to add these to both corners like this and just sew right on that line. So I'm going to grab 2 of these and 2 more of these little blocks so that I have enough to finish a whole block. All right, so line your edges up on the corner, because we've squared these so we know we can get a real nice straight line on the corner with these, as long as our block is lined right into that corner. All right, flip it around and do the other side. And I'm starting right in the corner here. And really, I mean, you'll get really good at this corner to corner thing once you do a few. You know, it's that whole thing that sewing is just practice. It's just practice and practice. And that's why you may start drawing the line and then you'll get brave and you'll be like, I don't know. And then you'll see like, oh, that worked. And so you'll be able to just shoot from one side to the other pretty easily. Just like I did right there with no line. It's kind of crazy, but you know, we can get there. All right, here we go. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to trim off these edges and iron them back. You can use a rotary cutter for this, or you can trim with your scissors, whatever you want to do. I'm generally, you know, I'm one of those who grabs whatever tool is the closest, and I use that one. I happen to grab my scissors today. All right, so now we're going to press these open, and your square should remain square. And you're going to do this to your whole pile of them. And then we're ready to assemble our block. So I have 2 of these, and I have 2 already done right here. And I'll leave these in a pile. And we're going to assemble this like a pinwheel. And so you want to remember that your color and your light square is going to be next to each other. And your purple, your plum color, is going to meet in the center. So we want to make sure it goes like this. So we have this one. And you remember your white to your color, the purple lines up in the center, and your purple lines up in the center, white to the color, like that. So now we're ready to go to the sewing machine. So I'm just going to lay these on top of each other like this, and I'm going to take this first block, and I like to start here where there's no other extra fabric. We're just lining up this edge, and then you just want to make sure that when you pull it together, that these 2 corners line up pretty close, okay? So we're going to come over here to the sewing machine. And we're going to start 1/4 inch right down here. Take a few little anchoring stitches and then make sure your 2 corners are lined up. And so 1/4 inch right down that side. Now on this one, I'm actually going to start on the purple because that way I can put my block together as a whole unit when I'm done sewing it. So I've lined up my purple, my edges match. And I'm going to make this come clear out to the corner. And then I'm ready to sew these 2 together, and I'm going to open them and check. And yep, that's right. We want all those purples to come together in the corner. So line up this edge out here, slide it under your foot, and sew 1/4 inch. And then just start a little bit and make sure your little middle seams are matching. And then this one right here. And then make sure these line up pretty close. And then come out to the edge on this one. All right, let's press it and see what it looks like. Okay, so actually that came out pretty nice. Let's press that nice and flat. I'm looking at all my little seams where my blocks came together. And this is pretty forgiving, actually. You don't have to die if they're not exactly the same, because it's not going to, I mean, in the scheme of things, it's not going to show too bad. Like this one right here, see, this is a little bit off, but you can't really tell that too much. And actually, if I had centered it just a tad better, it would be perfect. But it doesn't bother me enough to take it out and change it. So once you get your block done, you are ready for the layout. And this is a super easy layout because basically you're just going to sew your 2 blocks together. So they're going to meet up just like this, and they're going to form secondary squares on point at every corner. And so it just makes it really cool. Now, one of the things you absolutely must do on this is you must make sure that all your pinwheels are going the same direction, or you're going to lose the pattern. And so basically, we're going to put them together. Let's look at the quilt. We're going to put them together and see, here's our block, and we've just sewn them right together. And you do the same thing. All your rows go the same way, sew them right together. In this top row, we have 5 across and 6 down, because I used 30 of those squares. So it's quick and easy. It's a beautiful quilt. I love the order and the structure, and that's why we named it English Garden. And we hope you enjoyed this tutorial from the Missouri Star Quilt Company.